Welcome to another masterpiece of mayhem, Cunning Criminals. We will cover the Pink Panthers, the $100 million diamond robbery game. Hook, meet the elusive gang behind the world's most daring jewel heists. The night was dense with mystery, a cold haze shrouding the city as the heavy rumble of tires echoed through empty streets. It was just past midnight, and the city that never slept had fallen silent, lulled by an eerie calm. But high above the sprawling cityscape, on the top floors of a towering glass and steel structure, the plan was already in motion. Inside the luxury penthouse suite, the clock ticked steadily, each second drawing the masked men closer to their greatest heist. This wasn't just a robbery. It was a masterpiece in the making, an audacious act that would shake the world and the diamond trade to its very core. The Pink Panthers were ready for the final act, a performance of precision, daring, and unthinkable audacity. But no one knew it yet. Not the authorities, not the media, not the countless victims they had already left in their wake. This is the story of the Pink Panthers, a group of thieves so skilled, so elusive that they've become the stuff of legend. Their name alone sent shivers down the spines of those in the know. They weren't just criminals. They were a shadowy network, a clandestine brotherhood of thieves who had mastered the art of infiltration, the science of deception, and the craft of the perfect heist. They could slip in and out of a heavily guarded vault as if they were ghosts. They could vanish into thin air, leaving behind nothing but a trail of confusion and awe. It all began in the heart of Europe, where the criminal world was forever altered by a single robbery, a robbery so perfectly executed that it was dubbed the heist of the century. But this wasn't the beginning of the story. To understand the Pink Panthers, we have to go back even further, back to the streets of former Yugoslavia. In the 1990s, the Balkans were embroiled in chaos. War, poverty, and political unrest ravaged the region. The fall of communism had created a vacuum, one that would be quickly filled by criminals who learned to adapt and survive in the chaos. Some took advantage of the black market, while others saw opportunity in more audacious ventures. In the midst of this upheaval, a group of young men from the streets of Belgrade, quick-witted, resourceful, and eager to prove themselves, began to form a network. They were the descendants of a war-torn generation who had learned to survive by any means necessary. But what set them apart was their ambition. They weren't content with petty thefts. They dreamt of something much grander, something that would make them infamous. The members of the Pink Panthers were not just thieves, they were artists. Their craft was the art of the heist, and they understood that in order to steal something truly valuable, something that would secure them a place in criminal history, they needed to set their sights on diamonds. Diamonds, the ultimate symbol of wealth and status, had a mystique that captivated them. They were the perfect target, portable, valuable, and almost impossible to trace once they left the vault. But diamonds also had an allure for something else, an obsession with perfection. The Pink Panthers, with their ruthless precision, sought to embody that obsession. Their first high-profile robbery was in 2003, and it would change everything. The scene was set in the heart of London, at the world-renowned Graff Diamonds boutique on New Bond Street. It was a heist that would go down in criminal history. It was flawless. A team of 6 men, dressed in tailored suits and acting like high-rolling customers, walked into the store, their calm demeanor belying the danger that loomed. Their eyes scanned the displays, admiring the diamonds. The staff, trained to treat every customer with the utmost respect, had no reason to suspect anything. But this was the Pink Panthers, and they were playing a different game. With practiced ease, one of the men excused himself to visit the bathroom. He wasn't using the restroom, he was using it to slip into the back office, where the vaults were kept. With the precision of a surgeon, he disabled the alarm system, an act so quiet, so swift, that no one even realized it had happened. Within minutes, the other members of the gang sprang into action, moving with military precision. While the salespeople were distracted by the ringleader's charming conversation, the rest of the team accessed the vault. They weren't after petty gems. They were after the crown jewels of the diamond world, flawless diamonds worth millions. The gang moved swiftly, gathering the diamonds with the most seasoned professionals. But they weren't finished yet. As quickly as they had entered, they were gone. The entire operation lasted less than 10 minutes. The thieves vanished into the night, slipping away into the streets of London, leaving behind nothing but a stunned staff and a trail of confusion. By the time the authorities arrived, the Pink Panthers were already halfway to the airport, their loot safely stashed in custom-made bags designed to evade detection. That heist was just the beginning. Over the next decade, the Pink Panthers would execute more than 120 robberies across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. But it wasn't just their ability to plan and execute that made them legendary. It was their ability to disappear without a trace. They didn't just rely on skill and tactics. They understood human nature. They knew how to blend into society, how to manipulate those around them. They were masters of disguise, experts at reading people, and they had an uncanny ability to predict how a robbery would unfold, even down to the smallest details. One of their most remarkable heists occurred in 2008 at the infamous Dubai Mall, one of the largest and most luxurious shopping centers in the world. The Pink Panthers, now legends in the criminal world, had planned this robbery with surgical precision. They knew that the mall was home to one of the most prestigious jewelry stores in the world, a store that housed some of the rarest diamonds in existence. On the day of the heist, the gang blended in perfectly. They wore the clothes of affluent shoppers, the kind of people who were right at home in Dubai's world of wealth and opulence. They weren't interested in flashy appearances. They were focused on their objective. The security at the mall was tight, but the Pink Panthers knew exactly when to strike. The robbery was swift, executed in less than 5 minutes. In less time than it takes to read this sentence, the thieves vanished into the night, leaving behind only shattered glass and empty display cases. When the authorities reviewed the footage, they saw nothing but shadows. The thieves had struck again, leaving behind not just diamonds, but a legacy of fear. But it wasn't just the scale of their heists that made them notorious. It was their audacity. The Pink Panthers were fearless, operating in broad daylight in the most heavily guarded locations. They didn't just target small-time stores or back-alley pawn shops. No, they aimed at the pinnacle of luxury, the kind of stores that catered to royalty, presidents, and billionaires. They weren't just stealing diamonds, they were stealing power. They were stealing the very symbols of wealth, and with each robbery they carved their name into the annals of criminal history. As the years passed, the Pink Panthers became a legend, not just in the criminal underworld, but in the media as well. They became the subject of documentaries, books, and even movies. Their exploits were the stuff of myth, their heists so meticulously planned and executed that no one knew how they did it, or even who they were. But the Pink Panthers weren't done yet. They had only just begun. The biggest heist of their career was still ahead of them, and this time they would steal something far more valuable than diamonds. The final heist, the one that would cement their legacy, was about to unfold. But as we know all too well, the bigger the heist, the more dangerous the game. And so, as the tension mounted, as the world watched with bated breath, the Pink Panthers were ready to make their move. The final score was set, the stakes higher than ever. The question was, could they pull it off? The tension that had been building for over a decade was about to reach its apex. The Pink Panthers were ready for their most audacious and most dangerous heist yet. It was a plan so bold that it seemed almost too improbable, too perfect to succeed. But this was the Pink Panthers, and their track record spoke for itself. They had stolen diamonds worth millions from some of the most secure locations in the world, always slipping through the cracks, always evading capture. But this time, they weren't just after diamonds. They were after something much more valuable. It wasn't just about the loot. It was about making a statement. And their target was one of the most heavily guarded vaults in the world, the Antwerp Diamond Center in Belgium. Antwerp had long been known as the world's diamond capital. It was here that over 80% of the world's rough diamonds passed through the hands of dealers, cutters, and traders. The vault at the Antwerp Diamond Center was said to be impenetrable. It was protected by multiple layers of security, biometric scans, reinforced steel doors, a network of cameras money could buy. For years, it had been considered a fortress, a place where the world's wealthiest would store their most prized possessions. But as the Pink Panthers had learned over the years, nothing was impenetrable. Not when you had the skill, the patience, and the sheer audacity to pull it off. The plan was nothing short of perfection. It had been months in the making, with every detail scrutinized and rehearsed. The first part of the plan was the most crucial: infiltration. The Pink Panthers had always prided themselves on their ability to blend in. This wasn't a group of hardened criminals. These were master manipulators, men who could easily slip into any role, any situation. They knew that in order to pull off a heist of this magnitude, they would need to operate not as criminals, but as insiders. So they did what they did best. They became part of the fabric of Antwerp's diamond industry. To do this, they planted members of their crew in various positions across the diamond district. Some were hired as couriers, entrusted with transporting diamonds from one dealer to another. Others worked as low-level employees in diamond trading houses, learning the inner workings of the business. They used their charm and cunning to gain the trust of those around them, all while quietly gathering information about the security measures at the Antwerp Diamond Center. But the biggest risk was always the human element. The key to success was knowing how to use people, how to turn them into unwitting accomplices. The Pink Panthers didn't just rely on technology and brute force. They understood the psychology of trust, how to exploit it, and how to make people see them not as criminals, but as legitimate players in a world of luxury and wealth. As the days went by, they quietly positioned themselves in the right places. One member, known for his impeccable taste and knowledge of high-end jewelry, began attending gala events and charity auctions in Antwerp's elite circles, ingratiating himself with diamond dealers and wealthy buyers. Another member, skilled in IT, began subtly tapping into the security system's vulnerabilities, ensuring that when the time came, they would have access to the security systems and alarm controls. But even with all the preparation in place, the gang knew the most dangerous part was still ahead: the heist itself. The night they chose was deliberately quiet. There were no major events or high-profile visitors expected at the Antwerp Diamond Center. This would be the perfect moment to strike. As the city's lights flickered below, the gang's final preparations were set into motion. At precisely 2 a.m., when the center was closed and the building was nearly empty, the team moved into position. This wasn't going to be like any of their previous jobs. This time, they would have to outsmart the vault's security system, and most importantly, the guards. It began with a subtle but highly effective distraction. A fire alarm went off in a nearby building, an intentional diversion orchestrated by the Pink Panthers to pull attention away from the vault for just a few minutes. As emergency services and security teams responded to the false alarm, the Panthers seized their chance. The professor and another member who had infiltrated the building as an employee slipped through the back door and into the vault's access corridor. Their movements were smooth and deliberate, their faces calm as they navigated the labyrinth of hallways and security checkpoints. They had studied the building's layout for weeks, memorizing every camera angle, every guard rotation, every access point. As they approached the vault, the heart of their operation, they encountered the first major obstacle: a biometric scanner. It was a state-of-the-art system designed to read fingerprints, retina scans, and even heart rates. Without access to the proper credentials, the vault's door would remain sealed. But the professor had already thought of this. One of their inside members, a former technician who had worked on the system, had discreetly swapped the security logs in the days leading up to the heist. He'd made sure that when the time came, the system would read a false set of fingerprints, his own. With a slight touch, the door clicked open. Inside, the vault was a maze of high-tech security mechanisms, motion sensors, laser grids, and armored glass. But the Pink Panthers were undeterred. They had anticipated every measure, every possible obstruction. The professor pulled out a custom-made device, a small, sleek piece of technology that would disable the laser grids for just enough time to allow them to pass through. It took mere seconds for the team to disarm the system. The vault doors slowly creaked open, revealing the gleaming treasure they had come for. The diamonds. Rows upon rows of precious stones sat behind reinforced glass, each one more valuable than the last. But it wasn't just about the diamonds. The Pink Panthers knew what was at stake. They had studied the vault's contents meticulously. It wasn't just any loot they were after. This was the heist that would seal their place in criminal history. But as they moved in to collect their prize, something unexpected happened. A noise. The faintest sound, the kind that barely registers on the senses. The soft click of a security camera swiveling, or maybe the faint hum of a sensor recalibrating. In that instant, the gang realized they were not alone. Security had been alerted, not by the fire alarm, not by any of their planned distractions, but by something they had overlooked. A new protocol added to the system in the last few days, something no one had predicted. Time slowed. The team worked faster, desperately stuffing the diamonds into specially made bags. The noise grew louder, footsteps echoing in the hallway outside. The Pink Panthers, now on the edge of being caught, rushed to complete their mission. Then, just as quickly as it had started, the vault door slammed shut. The job was done. In less than 10 minutes, the Pink Panthers had stolen over $100 million worth of diamonds. They vanished into the night, leaving behind a vault full of confusion and an air of disbelief. To the outside world, it seemed impossible. The vault was impenetrable. The security was foolproof. And yet, they were gone. The heist became legendary. The news spread like wildfire. The authorities were in a panic, and the world marveled at the audacity and sophistication of the Pink Panthers. The perfect crime, the perfect escape. But even as the media buzzed with headlines and speculation, the Pink Panthers knew one thing that everyone else did not. This wasn't the end of their story. Far from it. For the Pink Panthers, the thrill wasn't just in the heist itself. It was in the escape. It was in the chase. They were still out there, in the shadows, always watching, always planning their next move. And they destroyed harm and saw to it that the vast web of international crime, one thing was certain: the Pink Panthers had achieved something few criminals would ever dream of: becoming legends